Ibby,
All right, Sean.
we're back.
We're back, baby.
Another gripping conversation about the most engaging topic that exists: email, personalization, and testing.
Sean, it's been, honestly, this is our third Email Geeks guest, right? Third or fourth?
I think this is just 3. Naomi and Alan and Maggie, right?
And they're always like so interesting. Like I learn a ton. Like for the listeners, like I don't do a ton of in the weeds stuff. We work with a lot of marketers, but I don't test emails. Like I don't actually understand like the sort of like testing infrastructure of emails. And I really, really like this one because it's, you know, it's all things that we love. She was scrappy, worked at a lot of like really cool companies and was able to like compare and contrast between them. And it was, yeah, just very fun.
The resume.
Oh yeah, the resume is crazy.
Mind blowing. Like when she gives her intro team and tells you the companies that she's worked for, like I would even if she's great, had a wonderful conversation. I think she's brilliant. But like if that resume came across my desk, I would hire them without an interview. Like just come start working.
Yeah. She like absolutely some banger experiences for sure. Anything specific to note? I really liked some of the sort of like she both like talked about it from a strategic perspective and from a overall perspective, but anything specific to add, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the things that stood out to me, she talked about key lessons she just learned from running over 40 tests on just the onboarding series at Buffer. So we got, I can't remember if we did 3 or 5, but 3 or 5 like very tangible things that we should all just kind of go apply or go test. And I think you could go so far as to say the results of these tests sound like they will work fairly universally, and so that like we can all just kind of go apply. She talked about if you don't have a dedicated email marketer, or you are early in your career as an email marketer, what are kind of the key priorities to think about and to approach. And then like, I mean, to me, hearing about the mindset of how much Duolingo tests and how they think about applying those tests, and then how that kind of shaped her work at Buffer, I think was just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, no, it was great. All right. Everyone enjoy the episode with Maggie.
I'm Amy Syed.
I'm Sean Collins.
And this is Numbers and Narratives.
Do you want to, I guess before we jump in, do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Maggie Glaska. I am the Senior Email Marketing Manager at Buffer. And this is my podcast debut.
We love podcast debuts.
I'm going to be honest, I'm shocked it's about numbers and narratives and not, like Bravo TV or something, something really intellectual like that. I recently joined Buffer, which is a social media toolkit for small businesses and individual creators as their Senior Email Marketing Manager. And I am their first ever email hire, which is a familiar role for me because I had the same situation at Duolingo. And so I was there for 4.5 years. And prior to that, worked at StreetEasy, which for those who don't live in New York is basically like the Zillow of New York City.
These brands absolutely slap. I use all 3 of them. StreetEasy just to find apartments I can't afford. Duolingo to make my bird happy, and Buffer actually as a company to schedule our LinkedIn posts.
Rip to the bird, right? The bird's gone. The duo's gone.
What?
The bird is back.
Oh, he's back. Okay.
What happened to the bird? I didn't realize this.
The magic of marketing. You'll have to go on social media to find out. He was hit by a cyber truck.
Oh my God.
And died, but he's back now.
I didn't know he came back. That's great.
Wait, he was hit by a cyber truck?
Yeah, get in on the lore. No, the marketing team at Duolingo is killing it. When I first joined, it was maybe 10 people. And now, I mean, I don't even know how many people they have at this point, but it's like quite international. They have country marketing managers all over. And the team, is able to do a lot more. Like they really have earned the trust of product. We'll put it that way.
I feel like, at least in like life cycle groups and kind of growth groups, like Duolingo is kind of looked to as like a leader in testing. How much of that is like has been informing the way you've come into Buffer and kind of approached your first few months at Buffer?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's determined everything. Like Duolingo taught me to be super like experiment first mindset, super detail oriented, comma, experiment first mindset. Like test everything. And so definitely when I'm thinking about tests, I sort of like think back to like the product managers I worked with at Duolingo being like, what would they think of this? Would they think I'm trying to test too many things at once? Usually the answer is yes. And that's how I know I need to kind of like pare it back. Because I tend to get a little bit ahead of myself when I am thinking about testing. Like there's too many things that I want to test. And so I kind of struggle sometimes with prioritizing that. But yeah, so one of their core values at Duolingo is test everything. And they're always running experiments. Every single thing that you will ever see in the app is run as an experiment and is rolled out to 1% of users to begin. And it's just slowly rolled out over time. And if there is any sort of, negative indication, it is shut down. If it's neutral, they'll leave it running. And like generally, if it's, maybe like it's a design refresh or something like that, they'll launch it. But otherwise, they're very like strict about what gets launched and shut down, and it has to be positive for DAUs. Can't be, negatively impacting another team's core metrics. Like if something is negatively impacting subscriptions, like they're probably not going to launch it, even if it's positive for something else.
I guess, can you give us like a couple examples? Like we love stories. We love sort of like tangibility. You don't have to like say, you don't have to give like exact details, but I'd love to hear some specifics on things you've tested recently, whether at Duolingo or at Buffer. Like how do you like measure success? Like what did you find? What changes did you make? And I'm also like pretty interested in hearing how long the average sort of like cyclical time span of a change from testing to production takes.
Really good questions. The answer for that last question is very different between Buffer and Duolingo. So going back to your first question about just like something I've tested recently. So I chatted a bit with Sean, prior to coming on here about the fact that I did just wrap up a huge, like basically onboarding revamp project. So Buffer has 3 distinct onboarding flows. So one is for free users, one is for trial users, and then one I still consider an onboarding series. It's for free users who signed up for free and then converted to a trial, or rather like began a trial. And so the reason that I considered that part of the onboarding series is that I saw the majority of people in that third flow actually signed up and began the trial within the same day. So that's just why I figured, okay, this is essentially onboarding. It's like 80% of people are doing this. And so to start, just like audited everything, like put together by trigger, like who receives what kind of in conditional logic, and variations there were among all of the emails. And then just like basically determined, okay, this button is way far below the fold. Like, let's move that up. Just like easy, quick wins like that. But then also kind of thinking about it like, what is this email even supposed to be doing? And is it achieving that objective? So then like measuring all of the down funnel results per email. And then just kind of going from there and being like, okay, do we want people to, so again, Buffer is this social media toolkit. You want somebody when they first sign up with you, what's the first step for them to complete is to connect a channel. And so after they connect a channel, you want them then to post. But I was seeing that actually people were getting quite far after the sign up period without connecting a channel. So I just saw a lot of opportunity to early on in that onboarding flow really push those people to connect a channel. So just looking at just kind of like logical things. There are also in the trial onboarding series, there was a certain point in the series, I think it was like day 3, where it actually was somewhat personalized in that it was checking for whether somebody had connected a channel. But when we got to that false note of, channel connect is false, then they just stopped emailing people. And so that kind of seems like a huge opportunity. So basically just like identifying all of the low hanging fruit and going from there, in terms of just like filling those gaps, streamlining the content of the emails. Like I mentioned, making sure that they're actually optimized to achieve their objective. Some of them were like this long. So I think the most valuable thing that I learned working at Duolingo is people don't read. And so I just basically cut down all of the email copy by half. And that has worked really well. I mean, I was able to increase some of these like key action from open rates across the board for all the flows, basically just by condensing them, like streamlining the content, and then also making the content more personalized based on whatever action the user has or has yet to take.
That's awesome.
So the big things were like shorten the copy, become more succinct, move CTAs higher, and get a clear call to action above the fold. Lean into personalization, and so you're doing conditional logic for what is the next conversion. And so when you're doing that, because it is so sort of like sequential in the tasks that someone has to do to become like successful with Buffer, right? Like you can't schedule a post unless you've connected a channel. You kind of you can't set up like a week's worth of automations until you post one time, right? At least you can, but like you're probably not going to. How much have you been like, okay, if they haven't connected a channel, we're just going to hammer them about connecting a channel versus like, do you kind of skip and start talking about posting and automations and stuff like that to kind of dangle the carrot of like, here's what you're going to get once you knock this step out?
Great question. Yes. So that was something that I was coming across as I was sort of revamping this flow, where I'm like, okay, and for people where they still haven't connected a channel, okay, I feel like we've kind of given them all of the tools to create their content. We've given them literally a blog post of 26 post ideas. We've shown them our AI assistant tool that can like help tailor content to their industry and like write a post for them essentially. And they still haven't gotten there. Exactly. Starting to dangle the carrot and just say like, it's actually really easy to take one post and cross post it. And then you'll get, 3 times the engagement just in one click, just by posting across multiple channels. And then also kind of those sort of more premium features, which Buffer doesn't really emphasize, like the paid subscriptions. They're really more focused on the free experience. But I do think sometimes there's value in just if somebody hasn't connected a channel and they're not posting, maybe they're worried that they won't be able to see the analytics. And so then kind of showing them like, we actually have these really robust analytics tools. If you want to start a trial and check that out.
I just as a nerd, I just need to know also what is the automation tool you're using here? Is it Braze, Iterable?
So we were using Customer.io.
Okay.
This is a little bit more meta, but as someone, I don't know, I guess I'll come straight out with it. How does sort of testing on the email channel impact the product writ large? So a good example, I don't know how often this happens, but something that it immediately makes sense for me to do, makes sense from my perspective, is you have all of these learnings from email, and I think that you can like innovate and iterate quicker just because you don't always have to like change up production code. But sort of saying, hey, like we see that if we get people to, I don't know, immediately write a post or immediately connect, we see like lower churn numbers or something. Going then to the product team and seeing, hey, like we realize this in our email, maybe we should change the product to force people in product onboarding to immediately connect something and just give them like AI ideas or something. We'd probably see an increase follow through. How does that kind of work, right? Like, I don't know if that's something that you spend a lot of time doing. I don't know if at most companies things are fairly siloed or fairly unified, but just curious.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like I don't have I might have a Buffer example, but when you were talking about like email being a great place to start, the first thing that came to mind for me was year in review. So like that's something so many brands we're seeing are adopting that now. And it's really hard. And it's hard to kind of like differentiate your year in review from others and make it worth sharing and make it something people actually care about. And thinking back to, I first started at Duolingo in Q4 2019. And I remember I came in and they had said, like, we really wanted to do a year in review, but it was like such a big product investment. So we're just going to send an email and see what happens. And fun fact about Duolingo is they actually have a homegrown email platform. And so getting this like year in review was actually a very big deal because we didn't have any personalization capabilities like in this tool for these kind of like batch and blast type emails. So it ended up being a really big project in a different way. Yeah, so I think from that year in review, like there was desire to do that, but I think an example of like maybe product kind of adopting this is I had expanded the eligibility criteria for people for year in review past like what they had really wanted, with the thought that it would be a good hook to get people back into the product. Because if you in January had grand plans to learn Spanish, and by March you're obviously not learning Spanish anymore, I think there's still a case to be made for you to be reminded of that little bit of progress that you made come December year in review time. And so it was actually really effective for resurrection. So I feel like year in review and these sort of yeah, that's like the first thing that comes to mind.
I think that was a brilliant expansion because, especially for a year in review, for a product that has I assume, a ton of growth in January, would come like New Year's resolutions and like, look at what I'm going to do. And now to have your year in review be like, hey, your new resolution, it's resolution time again. Like, you got another shot at this. Like, don't forget that you started this and we're going. That seems like the perfect time to, like, it's right in the kind of user's like natural decision-making cycle. It fits in pretty well. I think that sounds great.
Yeah, and thinking about like Buffer, there's definitely been some like marketing led initiatives that have inspired some product work. So Buffer has something called Creator Camp that someone on my team, Tammy, is like at the helm of. So it's basically almost like a 30-day social media habit building challenge where you can join this Discord and every day you will get a prompt about something to post about. And they're good prompts. It's like they're very thought provoking. Like, if you could, if there's like one thing you could say to an email marketer just starting out, like what would you say to them? And things that are just like, I don't know. I don't know how she comes up with all these ideas, but she comes up with 30 days worth of ideas. And then people will kind of share in that Discord their post. And then so the other people who are involved will like and engage and kind of like maximize the visibility for those posts across like LinkedIn and other channels, which is cool. But so these prompts they're amazing at getting people really thinking and actually posting consistently. And so she's working with the product team now to figure out a way to incorporate those prompts directly into the product. And so that's something that's being worked on right now. So I think definitely like content is a very like low lift thing to test through email and just other marketing channels to then help inform the product.
That's really, I mean, like, yeah, even the idea of going into a Discord and like validating conceptually that people will engage and it will be a high value kind of community to build before you invest the engine design resources into building it in the platform. I think that's slick. That's very slick.
Yeah, super interesting. I guess like what's your do you have any preferred like I know Sean asked about sort of like the automation stack, but or sorry, the email stack, but do you have any tools? Like what tools do you use for like testing and validation and stuff?
Yes. We don't tell anyone. We don't have an email on acid or litmus tool yet. Because we are in the midst of doing a sort of like email template design refresh project. So I'm waiting to get that charge on our account until there are actually templates that we need to test. So in the past, I've used Litmus and Email on Acid. I think, I mean, I don't, to be totally honest with you, I don't generally use those like inbox preview tools. I just like it to make sure that things aren't looking super janky on particular mail clients. Um, but yeah, I think I've basically in customer IO, I'm just sending to my own accounts and checking on my phone and desktop for now. And yeah, we'll see how it goes once we get those templates redesigned.
What about like data validation tooling? So like I don't know, some people will use like a stat sig or something on the product side. Interested to hear like what that is for like email.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So for that, we're using Mixpanel. So we have a single data scientist who's awesome, and he um is a great partner with like making sure that all of this data that I need is being parsed through to customer IO, to make sure that we can get those like down funnel. And they do have a stat sig tool on there. So if I'm running a multi-armed experiment, I can kind of do like a funnel and then look at the funnel's like breakdown and not just like the results, and then look at the statistical significance for each experiment arm.
That's super cool, man. All right, so you're the first, and are you still the only email marketer at Buffer?
Yes. Yeah.
And you have one day. In my head, like I've known about Buffer for so many years that I just assumed it was like this very large company. And now you're telling me like it's just you on email. It's one data scientist. Like, how big is the team?
How big is the team? So the entire company is 73 people. And the marketing team is, I mean, I think it's about 10 people, if that. I'm just trying to like quickly add everyone. Yeah, it's about 10 of us.
Wow. And then, so like on the email side, are you doing design and copy too? Or like, do you have a team? Like, I guess like what falls under you?
Yeah, so for now I'm doing design and copy. It's nice, like, yeah, it's nice but also scary to have the power of design, because I'm used to, especially at Duolingo, like design was such a high bar. So I get nervous that our marketing designer is going to get mad at me when she sees some of the emails that have come out. But because the emails that I am like revamping haven't been touched in 5 years, I think just the fact that I'm pulling in like updated product imagery is great, and she's okay with it not being pixel perfect. That said, she is, refreshing all of the emails right now. But yeah, so I'm basically just like taking the templates that we have. This is also my first time not coding all these emails from scratch. It's my first time using the drag and drop editor, which I sort of have a love-hate relationship with, because I feel like I can't get it just the way I want it on mobile, which is something I talked to the customer IO team about. But yeah, I still need to try out Parcel, which I hear is amazing, and I was just granted my license. Are you a fan?
Love Parcel.
Okay. I think that's going to be really helpful for this email redesign.
And I'm pretty sure Parcel has if you use it through the custom IO platform, I think you get email on Acid with them.
Oh, that's incredible news.
I think that could be a lie, but just if you're negotiating a contract with customer IO, just assume it's true and force them to give you a free subscription.
Question I always like to ask. It sounds like you're being, you're in charge of email marketing. You're just one person. We've started hearing more about companies that are being, quote unquote, either being asked to do more with less because of economic reasons, or because like leadership is now obsessed with AI. And so I guess we like to talk about sort of like personalization a bit. Are you, I don't know, maybe not now, but for the future, like looking at doing any sort of like personalization at the customer level, looking at sort of like figuring out where people are in a user journey, anything specific there?
We just also completed this, but I didn't do anything. But our director of growth marketing and this data scientist put together like a user data model, which is super helpful. I mean, that was something that like drove a lot of decisions at Duolingo, and I feel like when companies get a little bit I don't know, bigger, they can really benefit from that, like figuring out what set of their users are, currently using the product, how many have churned, how many are like at risk of churning.
I think if you talk to anybody, they're going to agree with conceptually that you should personalize messages, right? Like I've never met someone who's like, that's a dumb idea. Why would you do that? But then when you ask them, what are they doing to personalize, or what are you doing to segment? You'll often get the answer of like, well, it's just so complicated. It's going to create so much work. So like, how do you kind of think about where is the kind of spectrum of like, this is valuable? You know, do you kind of think about crawl, walk, run? Like you're revamping the whole onboarding journey now. And so it's like a version 1 of like, hey, let's just get something better and more current out. And then we'll come back through and figure out what they are. Are there certain kind of like key tokens that make sense, or like conditional modules? You're like, hey, if they've connected a social platform, we'll use this module. If they haven't, then we'll use this block. Or like kind of like where's the value versus creating more work? If you're a shop of one, like you obviously can't waste time.
I've been in both positions where it's like, yes, personalization is great in theory, but we have this homegrown platform and I need to like jockey for engineering resources to even make a subject line change. So I'm not sure I can get like personalized components into the email as well. So in Buffer's case, it's my first time working in an actual ESP in like 5 years. So I've just been loving, I can just pipe in whatever I want. I think like, yeah, there is, and I kind of talked about this already, but falling into the trap of getting too personalized out of the gate. And then it's kind of hard to tell which of those personalization components is actually effective. I do want to give like another Duolingo example. So their welcome email, I was convinced. So Duolingo used to, I don't think they do this anymore, but when you were creating an account with them, they would ask you like your learning motivation. Are you learning for school, for fun, for friends, for family? And I was convinced that this would be like such a valuable lever for personalization, and was hellbent on using it like anywhere and everywhere. And for our welcome email, decided to like just tailor the subject line and one element of the welcome email to each of those learning motivations, which I think there were like 8 of them. So it was kind of a big lift. And it ended up being like not even neutral, like it was negative just compared to like a generic welcome email. And so that was a lesson where I'm like, okay, maybe just start out with like subject line only. Like I went and had these like, it was basically, 2 value props in the welcome email. And I had one very like personalized value prop in each. And I spent quite a bit of time working on it. And it just ended up not being worth it at all and getting shut down. And then it came, the decision that they actually want to get rid of that part of the onboarding flow because we weren't actually using the information anywhere. Like we were just gathering the motivation and not doing anything with it. I don't know if that's still the case, but so it's like it would have actually then not been a long-term sustainable piece of information to use anyway. But yeah, I think in Buffer's case, getting really specific with like the actual channels a user has created is something I'm like tempted to do. And I think there's a lot we can do there because we have so much incredible blog content that's specific to all of these channels. But I'm kind of holding back for now unless it's something like, so we have this feature called Engage, and it's if you have a premium account, it allows you to like engage with comments directly in Buffer. And so this is only for right now, it's only for Facebook and Instagram. So I was noticing like we were plugging Engage a lot in the flows, but we didn't even know if this tool was able to be used by some of these people. And so I decided, okay, for that, I think it makes sense to break it out. If you have Instagram or Facebook connected, then drive them right to Engage so they can see the value of the tool. And if you don't, tell them right up front, like this is a premium feature you have with your trial, but you need to connect Instagram or Facebook to use it. And so prompt them to connect rather than to go to a page that's not going to show anything for them. And then they think it's like a bug and it's just a bad user experience.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
I think it's really easy to get bogged down in like the best possible scenario. And I think especially when you're like a small company and people have lots of ideas and they're like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we did XYZ? And it's like, yes, but I think for now we need to kind of just like improve this one piece and then we can just keep iterating and keep getting better so that we can see which is it that they haven't posted to Instagram in 3 days, or is it that they haven't posted at all in 3 days, if that makes sense.
Fascinating.
Is it?
It is, yeah. I guess that's why we met in a Slack group called Email Geeks, but I think it's fascinating. Okay, and so then if you had to give, if some other team is either has a small email shop or doesn't even have a dedicated email marketer, what would be kind of your 3-5 key instructions, bullet points on like, hey, take my lessons and apply them, and here's where to start kind of on testing?
Sorry, I missed. Was it for there is nobody there, and so I'm talking to...
Like if a company similar to Buffer in size were to ask you for advice and say like, what should I do? I don't know where to start. Whether I'm a new email marketer, or we don't even have an email team, and it's the product or a general growth marketer or whatever. Like, what's the recommendation?
Oh my gosh, great question. I think the first thing I would say is nail your onboarding series. Also, with an asterisk, doesn't necessarily need to be more than one email. Just make sure that it's a welcome email. I am really big on less is more. My pet peeve is like too many emails, and I'm an email marketer. So if I feel that way, the general population must really hate emails. So I think like just, your welcome email is your first shot at an impression with these people. It's like, it might be the only email they ever open from you. So make a count, make sure you're really getting your key points across and getting them to perform the one action that you would want them to, because it's your one shot essentially. Secondly, don't spam people. I would say be really careful. It's tempting to email people who haven't engaged in over a year about some great new product feature, but you don't want to prioritize that short-term growth and like a vanity spike in DAUs for the longer-term risk of damaging your deliverability. And then the third thing, don't spam, welcome email. Make sure you have some sort of reactivation strategy in place. So I think like, honestly, I don't want to say even before focusing on retaining users, but like ideally, if your product is good, it's doing that to some extent. And if people are falling off, I feel like that's where email can really come into play. So kind of determining like what are the North Star metrics, and then just always thinking about how email can help serve those.
All right, I love that. So like the two biggest touch points you would focus on to start are like initial onboarding, welcome, and then kind of churn prevention, resurrection type automations.
Exactly.
Okay, this is great. And so if anyone wants to kind of follow, I actually reached out to you because I love some of the stuff you're putting on LinkedIn. Is that the best place for people to find you, or how should people get in touch if they want to learn from you?
Yes, find me on LinkedIn. Shameless plug for my newsletter that I just started when I started working at Buffer, which is called Per My Last Email.
We'll put that in the notes.
Yeah, please find, follow, subscribe.
Perfect. We'll link to all that.
Incredible. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.